When most people think of Vikings, they picture brutal warriors, storming monasteries, setting villages ablaze, and sailing away with stolen treasure. And yes, raiding was part of the story. But here's the twist. The real secret behind Viking wealth wasn't just violence, it was strategy. They built an economy that blended ruthless raids with surprisingly sophisticated trade networks, stretching from the icy fjords of Scandinavia all the way to the marketplaces of Baghdad and Constantinople. To understand how the Vikings built wealth, you have to see their world for what it was, a land of scarcity. Scandinavia was tough, short growing seasons, thin farmlands, and harsh winters. There wasn't enough fertile land to support booming populations, so if the Vikings wanted more than survival, they had to look outward. Raiding was one answer, but it was only one piece of a larger economic engine. The first raids on England in the late 700s are legendary. Monasteries were rich targets, filled with silver chalices, golden crosses, and stocked with grain and livestock. More importantly, monasteries were poorly defended. This made them the perfect training ground for Viking warbands. Every raid delivered portable wealth, silver, gold, cattle, and slaves. And the slave trade, often overlooked, was a hidden backbone of the Viking economy. Captives taken from Britain, Ireland, and Eastern Europe were sold across vast networks, many ending up in the bustling markets of the Abbasid Caliphate. But here's where the Viking story gets more complex. Raids brought in quick riches, but trade turned those riches into lasting prosperity. Vikings controlled some of the most important sea routes of their time. Their longships weren't just weapons of war. They were economic tools, capable of traveling rivers as easily as oceans. This allowed them to connect the North Sea and Baltic with the great trade arteries of Europe and the Middle East. Take silver, for example. Arab garams, coins minted in the Islamic world, have been discovered in Viking hoards and graves across Scandinavia. They didn't get there by accident. Viking traders sailed east through Russian rivers, reaching hubs like Novgorod and Kiev. These cities connected them to the Silk Road and the Abbasid Caliphate. Furs, timber, honey, and slaves were exchanged for silver, silk, glassware, and spices. To the Vikings, silver wasn't just currency, it was a measure of power. Hoards of hack silver, chopped pieces of jewelry, and coins were buried as both wealth reserves and ritual offerings. In the West, Vikings integrated themselves into European trade networks. Towns like Dublin, York, and Hedeby transformed from raiding outposts into vibrant commercial centers. Dublin became a hub for the slave trade, while York grew into one of England's most important cities under Viking control. Hedeby in modern-day Germany was a bustling port where merchants from across Europe met to exchange amber, salt, wool, and weapons. These settlements weren't just staging grounds for raids, they were permanent engines of wealth. This blend of violence and commerce was deliberate. Raiding and trading weren't opposites, they fed into each other. Raids generated the silver and goods that could be reinvested in trade. Trade networks provided intelligence and access to new targets for raids. And when Viking warlords settled conquered lands, like Normandy in France or the Danelaw in England, they didn't abandon trade. They taxed markets, minted coins, and used commerce to stabilize their rule. Over time, this wealth reshaped Viking society itself. Chieftains distributed plunder and trade profits to their followers, creating loyalty networks that allowed them to expand power. Wealth from abroad funded lavish feasts, ornate jewelry, and impressive burial mounds, reinforcing social hierarchies. The Viking world wasn't just about survival, it was about prestige, status, and influence, all fueled by a hybrid economy of plunder and exchange. By the time Viking power began to wane in the 11th century, they had left behind more than burned villages. They had carved trade routes that connected distant worlds. They had founded cities that still exist today. And they had shown that wealth doesn't just come from the sword or the market, but from mastering both.